what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and I have 9.2 double legendary updated tier set Warlock Sims to talk about this evening. Number one, before we get into the video, thank you a crazy amount, Azavara, Demo Time, Father Daughter, everybody else who works on Sims, APLs, and things who has a bigger brain than I do. Not hard to do in the first place. I don't know how to write APLs, update them, so a huge shout out to everybody who's working on all the Sims and things. Really appreciate it, because without them, we wouldn't be able to run these Sims. So with that being said, I have Demo, Destro, Aff Sims for single target, 2 target, 3 target. A decent bit of things we already sort of know have felt out a bit on PTR, and some things are actually a bit surprising. A couple things might need to be revisited in a few weeks, depending on if things are bugged or not. There's a couple funky things in the Sims, but we'll get to that. We'll talk about all of them and hopefully answer all the questions you guys have today about what's good. Is FTS better than Vile Fiend? How good is Necro Aff? How bad is Destro in the first place? And all of that. Now, if you guys like to talk about any of these Sims or grab any week auras or add-ons or anything, you guys can swing by my Twitch or grab me my Discord. There's links to both down below. I stream 5 to 6 days a week typically on Twitch, all the raid testing, all of that. Yeah. Also, heads up, the 9.2 Warlock spreadsheet is indeed now live for my tier 3 Patreon Felguard rank or higher. Yeah, if you're looking at that or interested in supporting, there should be a link somewhere up here, as well as down below in the video description. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Starting off with some Demo Sims. So, like normal, I'll have a link to all these Sims down in the video comment section, pinned in there. If I forget, just leave a comment and I'll put them up whenever I see it, but I should make a mental note and remember from, well, here. So, yeah, starting off, Demonology, number 1. So, a few things to, I guess, define here. DSS is Night Fae. It is Decaying Soul Satchel. Wilfred's is Wilfred's. FTS. So you're going to see a few different abbreviations here. We're comparing Vile Fiend to FTS, right? Because the big question has been, does From the Shadows beat out Vile Fiend now? Vile Fiend, better decon value with her Tyrant, but FTS affects Demon Bolt, Hand of Gul'dan splash damage, Implosion if need be, Tyrant, Demon Fire damage now after patch 9.1. And it also works with your 4-piece. The imps that expire their Doom Bolt, it is now Shadow Flame damage, and is now affected by FTS, as well as their Implosion damage, which is Spite if you're imploding for whatever reason. So a lot of questions have been raised there. Is FTS better? Also, a third dog means more chances to chomp again, higher FTS uptime. The answer is it's sort of a wash. Vile Fiend is ahead by 25 DPS with a 12 DPS margin of error. I could get a little smaller for one to run a longer sim, but it's fine. So I would say, honestly, this is more or less a wash. Now, if we go in here and look at the actual 2 profiles, you can see that DSS Wilfred's with FTS has a much higher, I could say higher upside, with the max being 13,258, with Vile Fiend being 13,028. But the minimum Vile Fiend is 10,608, with FTS being 10,211. So, like we said a bit, it reminds me a lot of VOP Major Demonology towards the end of BFA, where if you got the right procs in your setup, you dealt an insane amount of damage. You were ahead of the next person by actual percentages. And if you got the wrong procs, with that version of Demo, you were below the tanks. With this version, it really shouldn't be that bad at all. So you see here, we also simmed Grim Inquisitors, FTS, Vile Fiend, Horn Nightmare, and Bale Spiders, for those of you wondering for night-based stuff here. Wilfred's does indeed still come out on top by a bit. Grim Inquisitors with their dog gaining value in single target, beating out Horn Nightmare and Bale Spiders. Now, I will say, one of the frustrating parts with playing Demonology is scuffing a Tyrant in its setup, right? Not playing Vile Fiend does give you a bit more mobility, right? And also, if you scuff a non-Grimoire Felguard Tyrant with, okay, I gotta move for a mechanic, if it just dogs and imps, just push it back 10 seconds and start all over again and you're fine, versus screwing up your Vile Fiend and having to just be angry for the rest of the poll, right? More mobility, a potential higher upside, a bit of a lower downside, might be a tiny bit more swingy, but you know, realistically, I could see a world where FTS is indeed played over Vile Fiend. Oh, all these Sims are also played with Dreadlash, by the way. I'm probably going to run like Demonic Strength Dreadlash Sims, maybe at some point down the road. But from what I did when I simmed them, Dreadlash with third dog and Carnivorous Stalkers was beating out Fel Commando and Demonic Strength. So depending on certain fights and things, like Sylvanas, maybe with ad sets, you might want Demonic Strength on a fight or two, depending on what, you know, the mechanics are. But for the most part, this is all Dreadlash, Carnivorous Stalkers, Tyrant Soul, Born of Blood Sims. Mainly just different legendaries with Vile Fiend and FTS. So, yeah, there we go. Night Fae. Moving on to 2 targets, right? DSS, Wilfred's, and DSS Grim here. Now, honestly, I'm a bit surprised that Grim Inquisitors did not overtake Wilfred's here in 2 target Sims. It is 5 minutes, so there's like that Wilfred's value with multiple tyrants and things like that, and I would assume that's more or less what you're really, for the most part, looking at here. It's not a 40-second sim. If it was, I would assume Grim Inquisitors probably beats out Wilfred's, but it's that full 5-minute one. And extra tyrants, more decon damage, you're still in a pretty good spot. When you go to 4 targets, 40 seconds though, Grim Inquisitors is ahead of Horned Nightmare, followed by Bale Spiders, which is weird, and then Wilfred's. But 40 seconds, you're getting 1 tyrant, you're not getting multiples here. So more or less you can play with the actual duration, but what you can take away from this is that Grim Inquisitors in AoE is pretty good and not horrendous when it comes to single target either. Keep in mind, this is DSS. Spoilers ahead. This is DSS, so 4 target Decaying Soul Satchel, 4 target Soul Rot Cleave, big haste amp, big crit amp. I did not sim Implosive Potential. We know it's very good in heavy AoE. It's also dead in single target for the most part, so I did not sim that. It's good. If you want to play it, have fun, right? So here is single target Night Phase Sims 11672. Here is single target Necrolord Demonology Sims 11672. Necrolord 11615. So the previous sims that I had run with the more with the earlier tier sets, without the 4-piece being changed, updated in early legendaries, actually favored Necrolord Demonology by like 50 DPS, I believe, give or take. This is actually shifted back to favoring Night Fae by a little bit. Now, that could be due to the 4-piece, I guess, having a higher proc rate. I'm not really going to speculate on it. They're both very, very close. But interestingly enough, FTS ahead a good bit for Necrolord Demonology, ahead of Vile Fiend by about 130 DPS. And it makes sense. Decimating Bolt, Demon Bolt damage, Demon Bolt increase, FTS increases, Demon Bolt damage. There's that. You could dig further in this if you wanted and try and really get to the bottom of it, I would assume. But, I mean, they're basically neck and neck, and the big thing to take away here again is in these single target sims, this is DSS, this is Night Fae, right? So you're not getting the full 4 target haste amp versus Necrolord basically having 1 target decimating bolt. It's a single target ability. It doesn't have 2 target, 3 target, 4 target scaling, right? If you compare the 2 target sims, you're looking at 14,607 for Necrolord versus 15,308. So you can see the actual difference here with DSS picking up value in 2+ target settings, right? Favoring Wilfred's here again a little bit, but Grim not being that far behind. If you go to 4 target sims, yeah, Grim is, pretty strong here as well, right? So TLDR is more or less what we thought, but it's cool to see the FTS is basically the same as Vile Fiend and better for Necrolord. I'm going to mess with it a little bit. I've done basically all my testing with Dreadlash, but I'm curious to see where Decimating Bolt stuff goes for Necrolord. Oh, and by the way, I did indeed sim with Power Siphon as well over Demonic Calling. For those who've been asking, the FTS build with Power Siphon for Necrolord. Unfortunately, it didn't end up being very well. This is Wilfred's FTS, PS. This is Bale Spider's FTS, PS. Essentially better than Wilfred's, which is surprising in a sense. I guess in heavy AoE. I did it in single target and 2 target as well. So, wasn't as good as I thought it would be. A bit unfortunate. Wanted some variety in that row, but hey, well, it is what it is. Here's your Wilfred sim for Shard of Annihilation. Wilfred's FTS and PS, right? But the baseline one playing Demonic Calling is still beating it out. So it's cool to see. We know that Demonology as Night Fae will scale, I would assumingly scale better with power infusion, stamina scaling effects, and things because of Decaying Soul Satchel's multiplicative haste amp and additive crit amp, right? So for the most part, also, oh yeah, Soul Shape too, right? So for the most part, I still expect Night Fae to be the de facto go-to play for Demonology Warlocks, but I wouldn't necessarily fault somebody if they wanted to play Night Fae or Necrolord. And I said that right? Night Fae is the go-to for Demonology in PvE, but I wouldn't fault somebody for playing Necrolord. Necrolord, however, has a lot of potential in PvP. There's some massive Demon Bolts, but I don't do arenas. So moving on, what do we have here next? We have Destruction. Yeah, Destro Sims. So similar to Demonology, single target, 2 target, 4 target, Night Fae and Necrolord. First of all, look at here, 10,489 for our big single target build here versus Demonology being over 1,200 DPS ahead. But hey, you win some, you lose some, right? So hopefully you like Reign of Chaos, because as we assumed, Reign of Chaos is ahead by a significant amount with the 4-piece giving you Reign of Chaos procs whenever you proc your Blasphemy Infernal. Roaring Blaze has sort of been left in the dust, which is predicted because of, just no interaction with the 4-piece. DSS, Wilfred's, Reign of Chaos, what we thought. Best in single target, followed by Embers, which is the Shard Gen legendary for Destro, Cinders, and then Madness here in single target, which is a bit interesting. When we played with Embers on PTR, it actually felt pretty decent. More shard gen, more bolt cast, more 4-piece uptime, higher end PS uptime. But overall, I'm not surprised to see Wilfred's up here. Once again, it is a CDR based legendary cooldown reduction, so you could play with the duration here and maybe get some different numbers here and there. But what we predicted from testing, yeah, basically Wilfred's Random Chaos, big 2-minute Destro build. Hey, it's fun to play, feels good. 2-minute Destro versus 3-minute Destro, two different specs. So there's that. Things get a bit interesting though when we go to 2 targets. So DSS, this is Night Fae, obviously. I expected Cinders and Wilfred's to be number 1 here, but it's actually Madness by 500 DPS. I checked the actual sims to make sure they were right, and they seem to be right. And spoilers ahead, this is also the same for Necrolord, which is very interesting. It sort of makes sense, I guess. Madness, more hasted bolts, more random chaos, I guess. Interestingly enough, there might be a certain point where I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much without looking at like super in-depth cast sequencing and stuff, but it's pretty interesting to see. Now, Madness has never been terrible in 2-target cleave settings, but it's typically been like neck and neck with Cinders, and maybe I think actually Wilfred's, and like I think Roaring Blaze Cinders has been a little better. It hasn't been the best, but it's been like a solid second, maybe third option, right? But seeing it ahead by a commanding amount here, what is this? Like a certain, this is what, 2.8%. It's pretty surprising. However, the thing is, depending on fights and damage profiles and what they dictate, I wouldn't be surprised. I talked to TSG about it as well. I wouldn't be surprised to just see Random Chaos Wilfred's played even in perma 2-target fights like Pantheon. I wouldn't mind testing Pantheon against Destro to see how Madness feels, but I wouldn't be surprised just to see Wilfred's Random Chaos played everywhere, right? Because with this actual legendary, you're back to 3-minute Infernal, and I hope in 10.0 Blizzard just makes Infernal 2 minutes so you can actually have fun with the spec. But 3-minute Infernal and 2-minute Dark Soul, oh, that just feels terrible. It just feels really bad. So yeah, there's that. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, in the single target sims, for those of you who are curious, I did run a Soul Conduit sim over Dark Soul. These are all Dark Soul sims. Here's your Soul Conduit sim. DSS Wilfred's Random Chaos, which is the same as this. Here's your Dark Soul one. Here's your Soul Conduit one. Pretty big difference, right? So yeah. Anyways, moving on. So the big 4-target 40-second sims. Interestingly enough, Madness is ahead again here too, but this is like a pretty short pull. 40 seconds, CDR, Wilfred's, all that kind of stuff. We know 2-minute Infernal Rank Chaos is good in 2-target cleave, right? Or AoE 4-target heavy cleave settings. We know how good Venthyr Inferno build looks as well. So not much really to see here. I would definitely put Wilfred's number 1 here over this. It's just, you know, it's sort of limited by actual like raw duration and things in Sims. So here is Night Fae, once again DSS, the max overall damage being 10,489. Here is Necrolord, 10,514. So there's about what, a 20-ish, 30-ish DPS difference between them. Still favoring Necrolord, but the gap is closed a bit from what we saw, right? And once again, these Night Fae Sims, DSS, they're single target. When you factor in 2-target stuff, we're at 16,466. I actually don't know what we're at for Necrolord. I didn't actually look. Do I even have this here? I do. Here's Necrolord, 16,185 versus 16,466. So once again, factoring in that second target for DSS and the haste amp and everything and the crit amp, it just gives so much value. And this is what we're saying, you know, even with Destro having Havoc, like having its Havoc window and having some added value with Decimating Bolt and Incinerate in the Havoc window, you can just see the raw power of the haste stacking from DSS in Havoc windows in cleave setting. It's just really, really good, right? It's sort of what I talked about on stream. Necrolord is that single target profile. Some reaches Destro, but Demo has pure single target implications, whatever, right? The same with Affliction. You know, it's good at single target, but I don't think it can stand toe to toe with Night Fae DSS 2+ target cleave. But either way, single target, Necrolord ahead by, I don't know, 30 DPS, give or take. Wilfred's, Embers, Cinders, and Madness. Similar to Night Fae, Madness is also ahead here in 2-target sims, which is very interesting, followed by Wilfred's, Cinders, and Embers, which is basically the same we saw here. Once again, CDRs, fight durations, all that. I still think you'll end up just playing 2-minute build with this. And when we get into 3-target cleave, 4-target cleave, you can see here's your 46,000 DPS in 4-target, 40-second cleave. Here's your 55,000 DPS. Once again, Decaying Soul Satchel, huge, insane haste amps, crit amps. You can't go wrong, man. It's Night Fae stuff. So that's what really separates things. On top of having Soul Shape with Night Fae, comparatively to Necrolord having Fleshcraft, which is fine, but Soul Shape is clutch. So with this being the disparity between the two, being 30-ish DPS in single target, and looking at the 2-target Sims here, I would give the nod to Night Fae once again. But I also wouldn't fault somebody if you really wanted to play Necrolord for whatever reason. Just I feel Night Fae personally, Soul Shape, DSS, yeah, and also multiplicative haste healing with PI if you're getting it, pretty good when it comes to a progression kind of setting, or Mythic Plus, right? So jumping into the Affliction stuff, these Sims are a little more in-depth, a little more complicated, and a bit harder to actually follow. So number one, these are not our single target Sims. We do a lot more damage than this. This is a Night Fae, Decaying Soul Satchel, and Synergy Sim. All I'm doing here is comparing Siphon Life, Writhe and Agony, Absolute Corruption in 1, 2, 3, 4 target Sims. Because there's something weird going on with AF Sims. It seems to be whenever you factor in a 4th target, it decides to push Soul Rot back like a minute and a half to your Phantom Singularity. It gets really weird. I don't really know why. And it sort of affects the Sims, which you'll see in the 4-target Sims getting into the actual like big Night Fae versus Necrolord ones. I'll show you here briefly though, just to give a bit of an example. Keep an eye on the actual disparity between them here and the actual like overall damage. So 9.5, basically 700 and 400. And 2-target, a bit more of a disparity, but an increase in damage. And I assume this is accurate because with 2-piece, it's pretty easy to maintain Absolute Corruption or Corruption and Agony. You have to refresh Siphon manually. There's no extension there whenever you Rapture, but it's pretty easy in 2 targets. You typically play Siphon anyways, right? So I think this is pretty accurate. Moving on to the 3-piece, we see another DPS increase, but a large drop off in like the difference here, right? It's 74 DPS between Writhe favoring Siphon still, but it's much smaller than the 500 DPS difference here. And the same can be said for Absolute Corruption, right? We're gaining some value there. We'll look at the overall damage here, 16.4. When it comes to the 4-target Sim, we're at 15.95. So something weird's going on here. It also jumps AC ahead of it by a crazy amount. So I don't know if it's some weird like 3-target max Siphon Life maintenance thing. I don't really know. I'm not sure. I'll try and dig into it more. I don't know. People smarter than me, maybe we'll look into it too. But keep that in mind when looking at the actual Sims here for AF. But that being said, you can still see a certain trend in these Sims, which is pretty much all we need to see for, well, AF Sims. So yeah, jumping into it, right? Night Fae, Decaying Soul Satchel, Malefic Wrath, DS. So try and follow what I'm saying here. It's going to be a lot of abbreviations because there are some combinations here, okay? DSS just indicates Night Fae, Decaying Soul Satchel. Malefic Wrath is MW. Drained Soul is DS. DS and NF. Drained Soul and Nightfall. Now, Drained Soul has been buffed in the most recent PTR build with the 4-piece. Now gives you a 10% proc chance off the 4-piece, up from 4%. So it is our de facto go-to single target talent when it comes to Malefic Wrath stuff, right? So it's ahead of Nightfall by about 121 DPS now. It was behind by I think about that much in the last PTR build, but it's up to date now. We're good to go. So you see here, this is Absolute Corruption Sims. So for example, this is Decaying Soul Satchel, Malefic Wrath, Drain Soul, and Absolute Corruption, right, in single target. So you can see for the most part, Malefic Wrath's pretty good in single target, right? You basically have DSS and Malefic Wrath that you play right now in SOD, but only one of the two, right? And the fights where it dictates whichever one you're playing. But we have both next tier, right? So past Malefic Wrath, we have a decent bit of a drop off in like our semi-relevant single target legendaries. The best one besides that is Synergy because we're playing DSS baseline, right? I also simmed Agony Sharja in here and Sacrilege. Now, spoilers ahead, I didn't run as many in-depth sims with them because they're just not good, but we'll get to that. So number one here, we know what's going on. DSS, Malefic Wrath, Drain Soul. Here's your AF overall comparison, 10-1 to Demonology, 11-6. So yeah, when it comes to Night Fae AF, you're still behind by a little bit in single target compared to Demo. Anyways, moving on. 2 targets. This is where things get a bit interesting. Watch, like see Synergy here? Synergy can be good in 2 target, right? It's a multi-target based legendary. Synergy jumps to number 1. Interestingly enough, with Nightfall, followed by Malefic Wrath with Nightfall. Then Drain Soul Sims here as well, you know, sort of semi-close, right? So Nightfall does indeed have an increased proc chance with the more corruptions that you have rolling, right? Which gives you that instant cast Shadow Bolt. Now I'm assuming there's just a bit of added synergy here because instant cast Shadow Bolt, if you're playing Nightfall, Shadow Bolt your filler spell that can proc your 4-piece, more instant cast bolts, more instant cast Raptures off the 4-piece. It sort of makes sense, right? +2 plus target scaling with Nightfall. It's pretty interesting to see. Now, I didn't sim the Shadows Embrace ones with Drain Soul. You can do it if you want. We'll do it when we get more further down the line. I'm not running 8 quadrillion sims tonight with very little differences between all of them because I'll be here all night. Right? There still could be some merit to that, but I mean, you know, we'll see when we get there. I sort of forgot about it. Honestly, I'm not going to run it now. I run this sim 18 times. But either way, the big thing here, synergy, like we thought, gaining value in 2 target settings, 2+ target settings with Decaying Soul Satchel, followed by Malefic Wrath. But Nightfall also gaining value here. You can see Agony, Shard Gen, here, doing some decent bit of damage. And here's Decaying Soul Satchel with Sacrilash. This is playing Siphon Life and not AC, which is still the favorite version here. DSS, Synergy, AC's here. 2 targets, we know Siphon Life is still better than AC. Moving on to 3 targets, though. DSS, Synergy, Nightfall, still better. But DSS Synergy Drain Soul overtakes the Malefic Wrath Nightfall build as well. So Synergy, you can see, gains a tremendous amount in 2+ target settings. Synergy, Nightfall, Absolute Corruption, still, it's fine. It's what it is. I think this might be getting into that weird territory of like the bugginess we looked at here, right? I'm not really sure either way. But what we can take away from the sim, Synergy is, I would assume, it looks like it's going to be your de facto 2+ target legendary as Affliction. Yeah, if you're doing those kind of things, right? Malefic Wrath's good in single target. We played DSS Synergy on Pantheon testing. It was very, very good, right? So what we thought, hey, that's good. Oh, we could also run Inevitable Demise Sims here technically too, because that was also pretty good. But I'm not going that far down that rabbit hole at 5 in the morning. So, and here's the 4+ target sim thing. Like I said, we actually like basically lose DPS here. It's like a wash, but it's the 4th target and it puts Malefic Wrath ahead. There's something weird going on with this. I don't know. For the most part, we can exclude this sim, but I would assume it's just Synergy and quite possibly Synergy, Nightfall, AC gaining more value, right? So, big thing here. Here is Nightfall single target, or sorry, Night Fae single target, right? I probably mixed that up a little bit. I'm sorry if I did. Night Fae single target, Malefic Wrath, DSS, Malefic Wrath, Drain Soul, 10, 1, 2, 4. And here's the actual damage profile. Let's pull that up briefly too, right? Right here, yeah. So you can see the actual damage opener, you know, spikes at 27k, give or take, you know, a relative 6k maintenance here, right around there, and then finally execute here. A minor spike, a bit higher than here, because I would assume Drains will execute, right? Moving on to Neck4 Lord Sims, though. Neck4 Lord single target for Affliction, 1,000 DPS higher. 1,000 DPS higher. 500 DPS behind Demonology, so I mean, you're still, you know, but 1,000 DPS higher. And this is due to the Shard of Annihilation, Drain Soul, Decimating Bolt, Malefic Wrath, Withering Bolt, all those synergies in one. Comparatively, looking at the damage profiles here, we can pull this up. SOA, Malefic Wrath DS. It's a little different. You spike to a tiny bit less, about the same here, but this is like your 20% big CD window at 2 minutes. When you're in Execute, and you're getting your actual your Drain Soul buff by everything, and the damage is increased by 100 under 20, plus Decimating Bolt, further increasing it, right, when you get that low. Even the final little 1 minute window here is pretty big. This build brings a very, very, very large Execute window. 40% of your damage is Drain Soul with this build, right? Comparatively to it being a lot less with Night Fae. I'm not gonna go back and look. A lot less. I believe I had 150k Drain Souls when I was testing it on live. It's really, really, really strong. Albeit that dummy was basically dead, but still, it's exceptionally strong. But the actual damage, like overall, from what I've seen in testing, is a little bit lower comparatively to what I've seen like with Night Fae things, give or take, because Night Fae has a bit more consistency. You don't really have that huge damage up until you get to the actual end of the damage window, more or less. That's where most of your value comes from, because all those stacking effects with the baseline 100% increased Drain Soul value, it sort of makes sense, more or less, right? So, besides that, going back, SOA, Shard of Annihilation, Malefic Wrath, Drain Soul, Nightfall, not too far behind, about 200 DPS, a bit more disparity, as you can see here, because Drain Soul, once again, Necro Lord, it's good. Synergy's about here. Basically the same as the Night Fae ones. Malefic Wrath, it's good in single target. 2 target. Synergy does not overtake Malefic Wrath. Once again, and okay, spoilers ahead, this is a trend into the 3 target sims as well. Synergy jumps, I believe, by a little bit, yeah. But I just don't, it's just really hard to beat out the raw strengths and the actual like just scaling factors, or I guess, yeah, scaling factors of Drain Soul with Withering Bolt, with Decimating Bolt, with Shard Annihilation, with whatever other thing there is I forgot to mention, right? I guess it is sort of worth drawing attention to the the two target Sims. Nightfall does indeed pull ahead again compared to the Drain Soul effect here. You don't have the Drain Soul execute damage, because if you're playing Shadow Bolt, you don't get the 100% damage amp if the target's below 20%, but you still have baseline Decimating Bolt execute damage amp, which scales the lower the target is in health, right? But the interesting thing here, this is what we talked about a lot with Night Fae versus Necrolord. Necrolord, a lot better in single target by about 1000 DPS, right? Let's go back here and look 10k versus 11k, right? But if you go to two target, Night Fae's at 13.3, Necrolord 12.3. That's the power of Decaying Soul Satchel, the multiplicative haste stacking, the additive crit stacking, and just the two target cleave, the three target cleave. 3 target being 16.5, Necrolord being just 14k. That's the power that you have on these council-based fights in Mythic Plus, wherever where you have these 2, 3, 4 targets plus stacked with Night Fae, right? Comparatively to Necrolord. Necrolord has the good single target cleave or single target damage, but not the spread cleave that Night Fae has, right? So, interestingly enough, SOA, 3 targets here, Shard, Malefic Wrath, Nightfall, AC overtakes everything else. And I do still think Malefic Wrath is probably just the strongest option here, unless you're trying to get some weird synergy cleave on a council fight as Necrolord. But if you're playing a council fight, you should be playing Night Fae. Like I said, you can see the actual difference here, a 2.5k DPS difference, a 1k difference right here, with it being 1k lower in single target, right? So now there are a couple fights this tier, depending on how important the actual execute profile is, that this build might end up seeing play. Once again, similar to Destro and Demo, like I mentioned, you are losing out on Soul Shape. And like, I know people say, oh, I don't care about Soul Shape, or it's incredible. There are people on both sides of the fence. They either love it or they hate it. But in the end, I can tell you, Soul Shape has saved me many times in many scenarios compared to where just standing still and flesh crafting wouldn't have done anything. Soul Shape's OP. And when it goes away, when Shadowlands is over, it's probably the one thing I'm going to miss. But that's something to factor in. But if you're on a fight where you don't need that damage necessarily, a fight where maybe you need the huge execute damage of this build of Affliction, Shard Annihilation, Malefic Wrath, Drain Soul, Necrolord stuff, I could see this build potentially being played. But in the end, it's still 500-ish DPS, 600 behind Demonology. And this is not factoring in like PI, stamina scaling, boomkin things, which, you know, if Demonology ends up being decent next tier, I would assume you probably end up seeing played. So, but the biggest thing here, Necrolord's ahead by 1k. In single target, I wouldn't fault somebody at all for playing Necrolord, Drain Soul stuff, but I'm probably still going to play Demonology in single target, so that's sort of a not the best argument for me. But hey, you know, either way, it's really cool to see the 1k difference holding strong from where we saw it a few months ago as well, in a similar spot. But yeah, that about wraps it up, dudes. Thanks for watching. I hope this video clarified how double legendaries and tier sets are actually looking for Warlocks heading into tomorrow, which is the final testing of, I guess, Mythic and the Raid. Actually, tomorrow is Mythic Anduin. I guess today, because it's 6 in the morning. Of Mythic Anduin and Mythic Halandris. And at that point, barring them testing like Xyronic and things again, they're probably done with testing this raid. Now, class tuning still might come. Covenant tuning, Legendary tuning. A lot of things can still change. And if they do, I'll make a video talking about it there as well. But I've gotten a lot of questions lately about this. Where are they all at? The Sims APLs were updated tonight, so this is, from what I understand, been the first night we can actually make this video with accurate results. So let me know what you guys think about these results in the comment section below. Any questions, drop them down there. I will be sure to get back to you. I'm surprised the FTS is about equal with Vile Fiend. I'm gonna be honest, I'm happy about it, because I hate scuffing tyrants, and Vile Fiend I feel like has been the biggest key factor in that, barring just, you know, me having to move around. But I do sort of feel like Dreamweaver is going to be, oh, every single one of these Sims was, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, with Dreamweaver and with Plague Deviser for Necrolord. So yeah, I assume for the most part, Dreamweaver is going to be probably just Artifacto Soulbind across the board for every spec, playing Night Fae and probably Plague Deviser, maybe some play with Necrolord. But I know for Demonology, like Soul Rotting before your pets with Nia, but having Decaying Soul Satchel just feels really bad and really just out of place, right? You're not really using much for that haste and crit amp, right? But popping it after your Tyrant and getting that haste and crit amp for your Tyrant feels a lot better. I know there's some give and take with the mechanics and Feel the Blossoms movement and all that, but it's probably is the world we're going to live in and have to deal with it, right? But I don't know. We'll see where it goes. Any weak warriors or anything here you've seen, feel free to swing by my Twitch or hop on my Discord and grab them. They're all available to you guys for free anytime. Once again, the 9.2 Warlock spreadsheet is indeed now live for the Tier 3 Fail Guard rank my Patreon or higher. Thank you guys for all the support there. I really appreciate it. If you're interested in supporting, there should be a link somewhere up here or down in the video description. And while you're down there, be sure to smash the like and sub buttons. It helps out a ton. Thanks again, dudes. I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.